like to introduce my next project here. This old dash display here, I just don't like it.
Welcome aboard. I'm Captain Joe, and this old girl, she's my home, Toko. She's a 1982 Ed Monk trawler with a monster in her belly. I've spent the last few years aboard making upgrades, and now she's ready to set off over the horizon. So join me as I say goodbye to life on land in pursuit of my dreams at sea. Hop on board to see how much freedom I can live for.
So I've made this new dash out of teak, and I varnished it and it looks real good, and then I'm going to put in my smaller chart plotter in this hole here. So it's going to fit exactly in the gap that's already there, but there's a lot of kind of scary rat's nest wiring on the back side of this old setup, so that's why I'm a little bit intimidated by this project, but anything that can be done can be undone. So we're gonna clean this up and everything's gonna look better, and all the wiring in the back hopefully will be a little bit more appropriate. Now, before I go in and start taking things off and getting all my wires confused, I'm gonna go to the back side of the panel with some blue painter's tape. And a Sharpie, and I'm gonna put tags on each of the wires, and I'm gonna take pictures too, so that when it comes time to rewire everything on the new board, I won't get so confused. I will still get confused, but maybe I won't get so confused. I'll show you where we are, right? So there's the dash and everything. We're gonna go inside. We're gonna go like that too, and I will show you, first of all, my lovely working space. I got a nice cushion at least, and we're gonna crawl around. We're gonna look. So here's the spaghetti that we get to go through with the new one. So a lot of this stuff, like over there, we're not touching that stuff. But each of those 4 gauges, definitely getting touched. This 5th one here will come out and not get replaced. And then that guy there, we're not gonna touch, that's the bow thruster. So my blue tape and Sharpie idea I've already abandoned because there are just too many wires back here. So I did take a lot of pictures, and my plan is to disconnect one gauge, put it on the new panel, reconnect it, and then go on one at a time. That way I don't end up with 50 or 60 or 200, however many wires there are here. At any given point, only like 6 or 7 of them will be disconnected at a time. Okay, so here's the plan, and here's why it's not gonna work just yet. One at a time, but we don't fit. So I measured and I cut, and I measured wrong and I cut wrong, so I'm gonna try and sand them out or file them out so they're big enough for these gauges. Alright, so here's the cool part of having to sand this thing. Really, there is no cool part, but the cool part is I just went through my whole sanding kit, so I know exactly where my really rough grit sandpaper is, so saving ourselves some time as we waste a lot of time. Okay, at a little bit of a midpoint on this project, you can see I've got all the gauges, they're mounted in there, and they're wired properly. And I've just started to cut out the hole, and my battery ran dead on my multi-tool. So I'm gonna cut that out, set it in there, and then we're gonna test and make sure this stuff all works. And then the other chart plotter will get put in probably at a later date. Okay, it comes to the moment of truth, if you will. So everything's fitted, looks really good. The Simrad is kind of dry fit in there. I don't have that wired in just yet, but I believe all of the other gauges are wired in correctly. Wired in correctly, not wired incorrectly. Anyways, we are gonna turn the key and see what happens here. All right, wandering back up to the upper helm station. In a second, you'll hear the buzz, which is the low oil pressure alarm, which is normal until we start the engine and oil flows. Here we go. And look at that. We've got oil pressure. Uh-oh. Voltage. All right, we got to see what's going on there. And then the tachometer rolling just like it should. Oh shoot, water temp is off too. Okay, well, we'll check on those. I must have wired something backwards. But the good news is 1 and 2. Those are 2 of the big ones. Okay, so we had only 2 gauges working, right? I gotta turn the camera on. So only 2 gauges were working. Found out the issue was ground wire, which I'm still kind of learning what that means or exactly why that was the problem or why that solved the problem. But I'll show you what I mean. Hang on. So like I said, we were having issues where these 2 gauges weren't showing anything. I knew the water temp was wrong because it was just pegged at 220. Now it's down by 100 because the engine just started and it's cold, but we know that it's moving, right? Oil pressure's right, RPM bouncing along, and then voltage, that's correct too now. So what had happened was we had the ground wires. So the ground wires are these black ones for the most part. We might get a funky color somewhere along the way. But basically the initial, or like the terminal ground wire, the one that comes from like way down below, that everything needs to lead to, we didn't have each gauge coming back to this ultimately. So I added a couple little jumpers to rectify that problem, and lo and behold, things work. There those RPMs go. Woohoo! I want to debrief today's project because I think there are a lot of really good lessons outside of 12 volt DC. Basically, I was afraid of doing this project for a long time, probably upwards of 6 months. I think I made that teak panel with Bob at least 6, probably 9 months ago. And I was afraid of the nest of wires that was behind the old panel because I've never really tackled a project like that, aside from something that just requires power in, and that's about it. So I was afraid of it because I hadn't worked on it, I hadn't practiced with it, just haven't done it before. And so I was avoiding it. And the lesson, well, one of a couple lessons I think I'm trying to share with you guys is that the hardest part with this project, and probably any other, is just getting started. And once you commit to say, one way or another, this thing's getting started and it's gonna have to go back together, then what you've allowed for is the opportunity to learn something more. So as soon as I took the old panel off and I started looking at the back of it and taking wires off, I was thinking, well, why are they there in the first place? And then you start to get kind of the whole picture of, okay, well, so the red ones come in here and the black ones all connect like this, and then you have the input from the takeoff on the engine for all the others, right? So it's no longer just like a tangle. Now it's more like a spider web that makes some sense and you could try to replicate. So rather than my initial game plan, which was to just, this is how it was, I'm going to put all those wires right back in the same place, it's just going to be on a new piece of wood. Instead, I kind of was able to move things around into a better configuration that's going to work, that's going to be easier to understand for me if I ever have to go back in there and work on it, or for the next guy, whatever. So overall, I've gone from having something I didn't really like and I didn't understand it to a fun little project that now looks how I want it to look, has some added function that the old one didn't, and I understand what's going on behind the panel with all the wiring.
And so to many, it may just look like, oh, cool, nice new dash panel, but it's really been a lesson in trying things that you aren't comfortable with and expanding your knowledge base, and then just learning that, you know, most things in life you can accomplish yourself. So go out and solve your problems, at least try to solve them, at least try to understand what the problem really is, you know, and you might surprise yourself and end up with something you really like.